Welcome to the Dojotalkpodcast. Please remove them shoes before entry.
Sam Master is here, and you still have not taken off your shoes.
Yeah. Living every day to define man's mission. Looking to the sky for divine transmission. Deaf man's vision makes the blind man listen. Eyes on the prize, this is blind ambition. Thank you.
Yo, what's going on, world? Welcome to another edition of the Dojo Talk Podcast. We are on episode number 56. No, I lied. Episode 57. This is the second podcast I've recorded today. I recorded episode 56 earlier, so by the time you hear this, the UFC card that took place in Norfolk, Virginia this weekend between main event between Anthony Pettis and Dustin Poirier, that fight will have happened, so that podcast will be out. So, you know, if you're an MMA fan, give that a listen. We brought on the homie Stokes for that episode, so shout outs to him. But today on this episode, man, it's back to the music. Back to I might talk about a movie. I did see Thor, so I might give some brief thoughts on that. Won't spend too long on it. But real quick, before getting to the meat and potatoes of the episode, just a few plugs. I forgot I had an email for this podcast, Dojotalkpodcast at yahoo.com. So if you have any viewer questions or anything like that, you can submit them to Yahoo, and you know, maybe I'll read them on the show, read some answers, you know, have some fun, have some interaction, all that good stuff. As always, the podcast is on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes. If you're on iTunes, please like, subscribe, and rate on iTunes. We're on Google Play. We've got a Dojo Talk Podcast Facebook page. If you want to follow me, I'm on Twitter at Serial Sensei. So yeah, you know, just trying to get some interaction. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Definitely no shortage of content. Fights are happening every week. I've been listening to a lot of music. I just haven't reviewed much lately, so I'm gonna get back into that today. And even after this review, I still got to talk about this Open Mike Eagle project, which I finally got around to listening to, and some few other projects I got lined up that I'll review. Not sure yet. I know Open Mike Eagle will definitely be coming, and flip-flopping between some other ones, but we'll see what happens. Point is, content is coming, so just be on the lookout. I'll probably have multiple episodes, at least 2 episodes out this week that you guys can listen to. But that being said, let's just get into it. So I got a chance to check out Thor Ragnarok last weekend, and I won't spend too much time on it, going into too much detail, because I don't want to give away spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen it. But just my quick, brief thoughts. Dope movie, man. Hilarious movie, actually. Out of the 3 Thor films, this one, Ragnarok, is easily the best, I would say, compared to the first Thor and Dark World. Yeah, man, Thor and Hulk had really, really great chemistry in this movie. And it didn't, because I had other people ask me, did I think it was good only because of the Hulk? And I mean, the Hulk definitely added to the movie, but I don't, at least in my opinion, feel like he carried the movie. Like, you know, Thor definitely held his own. Loki was pretty dope in the movie, and other characters who I won't mention. But yeah, man, it was a nice, you know, it was a decent story. It was paced pretty well. There was normally always something going on, and in between the gaps where the story was just progressing, if there wasn't much going on, you got a lot of good comedic moments. I can't stress, like, this movie had a lot of funny moments. Kind of typical to, you know, a Marvel movie. I feel like they definitely take that route a lot, but it definitely worked in this movie, man. The comedy was well placed, but the action was also pretty good. You get to see Thor do some, I won't spoil it, I ain't gonna say nothing, but Thor has some moments in this movie, man. He turned it up a notch. I'll just say that. Thor reached some new heights, out in these Marvel streets. So, but yeah, man, I won't spend a ton talking about it. But real quick, if you haven't seen it yet, there are 2 cutscenes at the end. One right after the movie, and then one at the end of the credits. So, I mean, if you're a Marvel fan, you already know what the deal is. But there are a lot of people in my theater who up and left after the credits, and I'm like, come on, y'all know how Marvel does. There are always scenes after the credits. But just throw that out there. So if you haven't seen it yet, make sure you watch the 2 scenes afterwards. They definitely tie into. I won't say nothing. I ain't gonna say nothing, but I'm pretty sure those 2 scenes hold significance for the future of Marvel's, cinematic universe, movies to come. Hintity hint. but yeah, man, Thor Ragnarok was really dope. Definitely worth the watch. Definitely go see that. Now I'm waiting for Justice League. That's another story. that's another story. But I can't wait. That comes out on Friday, and I'm in there day 1, not a game. Punisher comes out Friday too, matter of fact. So it's a lot of good stuff going down this month. So man, yeah, Friday is going to be a serious day. I wish I could have took off of work so I could just sit home and watch Punisher all day and then just go see Justice League later. But it is what it is. I gotta work, gotta pay bills, and all that boring adult stuff. But anywho, so that's just my quick thoughts on that, man. Go give Thor a watch. It was a pretty dope Marvel movie. On to some music now. 2 albums on deck. Big Krit, Forever Is a Mighty Long Time. Wu Tang Clan, Saga Continues. I'm gonna start off with the Krit album because I'm probably gonna have a lot to say. A lot to say about this album. And then I'll touch on Wu Tang at the end. But yeah, man, Big Krit, Forever Is a Mighty Long Time. Man, we haven't gotten a Krit project, or we haven't gotten a Krit album in a while. Catalactica came out in 2014. Since then, I think he put out he did It's Better This Way, which I think came out like 2015. And then it was another mixtape. I can't remember. He did another mixtape after It's Better This Way too. Was it 12 for 12 or some other mixtape he did where he was just like rapping over a lot of industry beats and stuff like that. But either way, like, it's been a while since we've gotten a Krit project, especially an album. And if you've been following Big Krit's career as of late, he had his stint at Def Jam, which, apparently didn't go too well. That situation in itself is crazy because, to me, like, Krit is such a talent and somebody who I think would have a lot of mainstream appeal had they marketed and pushed him the right way. But Def Jam dropped the ball. There's no other way to say it. Def Jam completely dropped the ball with Big Krit. But I guess in the end, man, it worked out the way it was supposed to. So Krit ends up leaving Def Jam. He's out on his independent grind, and this is his first album of I feel like him celebrating his independence. And if this is a preview of what's to come in Krit's future now that he's not on a label, I think we got some fire ahead of us, man, because this album is really, really, really good, man. Like, I remember I was on Twitter a while ago, like, and he was dropping hints that he was putting out a project. He was putting like bits and pieces of like pictures and words, and then I think the first thing he put out was Confetti, and like he kind of dropped like subtle hints with that, and then that single came out. I enjoyed that one. Then he did Keep the Devil Off, which I'll get into that song later, that joint right there, but I'll get into that later. But anywho, man, I was just excited to find out he was putting out an album. And then when he puts out the track listing, this joint is like 22 tracks or something like that. And then you find out it's a double album. So I wasn't worried, but I was definitely intrigued, because double albums for me can be a hit or a miss a lot of times with a double album. You know, like the first disc might be fire, but the second disc might be kind of or vice versa. Or it'd be like, man, if you'd have just took, you know, tracks, you know, 1 and 2 off of the second disc, put them on the first one, you know, you'd had just one classic album. You know how double disc albums go. But yeah, man, I was intrigued to see how he's gonna pull off the double album. But then at the same time, I wasn't surprised it was a double disc, because like we haven't heard a Krit album in so long that I'm imagining, well, not imagining because I listened to it, but he's probably got a lot to say, because so much has happened within these last few years. You know, with him leaving Def Jam, and now he's indie, and he's trying to figure that whole lane out. So like I guess I figured when I saw it was a double disc, like he's probably just got a lot to get off of his chest. And then you listen to the album, and yeah, he got a lot off his chest, man. Like, oh man, I'm trying to even figure out what. So let's do it like this. So first disc of the album is the Big Krit side. Second disc is the Justin Scott side. Justin Scott being his real name for anyone who doesn't know. The first disc is, I want to say, like, it's the typical Krit. You get that, it's like that the first disc is more so like that Southern boom Krit. Like, this is the Krit where the tracks are just knocking, like tracks are just knocking, every beat slaps. He's getting aggressive, he's getting hype. Like, that's the kind of Krit on the first half of this album. But what I immediately noticed when I started listening to this is one of the things about Krit that is good, and I almost feel like bad at the same time. He's a very versatile artist, but I do think he tends to stick to a formula sometimes. Like, you kind of know what you're going to get with a Krit album. You know you're going to get a track, like I said, you're going to get a lot of that Southern boom. You'll get, you know, a track about his sub, which I'm going to get into. You're going to get, you know, a few smooth joints, a little introspective song here and there, but he definitely does that really well. Like, you know what you're going to get with a Krit project. But even with that being said, this album took everything I loved about him since I heard like Forever in a Day and Return of Forever and Can't Remember the Time, all those old mixtapes. It took everything he did good and just made it great. Like, he really elevated everything we've know and love him for musically. He put on this album and somehow made it sound better than it ever has. And I think that has a lot to do with him on this album, and I guess I'll start to get into it. He worked with a lot of different producers on this album, and you definitely hear it. And not that's not a bad thing. And normally, we know Krit produces a lot of his own work. Really, like a lot of his mixtapes and other projects are almost like entirely produced by him, or at least like 60-70%. But it feels like on this album he let other people, you know, kind of come in and put their spin on it. But I feel like he was still guiding the project, but you can definitely feel that like there was some other hands and other things going on in this project from these other producers. And just to get into it, some of the production credits, just to give an idea, of course, Big Krit himself. You had DJ Khalil, Manny Fresh, Organized Noise, Corey Moe, I think Super Mario, I think, did a track on here. He had a lot of different producers on here. And also, another thing he did really well on this album, really great use of live instrumentation, which you get right off the first track. Opening track to the first disc Big Krit, you just kind of get this nice slow opening, and Krit's kind of just talking, and then slowly as the song progresses along, the beats start to fill in more. You start to get, more instruments coming in, and then the beat just drops, and then he just starts snapping, like and that track really sets the tone for this album. And like this whole first disc, man, it's just fire after fire after fire. Like it starts off with the Big Krit intro track, and then it goes on to Confetti, which was the lead single. Then we go on to Big Bank with T.I., man. Like, that's another thing about this album. His use of features was really good. Like, he picked people that really fit with what he was trying to do, and everybody just really gelled really well. And man, him and T.I., man, they were snapping. Big Bank is, like I said, it's another one of them tracks that just screams the South, man. A nice trunk knocking track. Both these dudes are going in. T.I. comes in on the latter half of the song. He just bodies his verse with the lines about man, I should have wrote this down. The line where he's talking about, there ain't no excuses. My daughter can't sleep in excuses. My son's looking at me like, where's your paper? Something. He had this whole line about excuses, this whole scheme that was just really dope, man. Like Krit and T.I. definitely need to do more tracks together, man. Those dudes feed really well off of each other, and that track was just, man. That track, that beat, really all the beats on here, man. Like I said, back to the live instrumentation, man. Like on a lot of these tracks, you get some bass, you get some guitars, you get keys, and it just, everything fits so perfect within the scope of what they're trying to pull off. I'll just go down the track listing, man. Subbenstein, which produced by Manny Fresh, man. This is the track, man. You listen to this joint, you gotta turn this just all the way up. Like the first time I got a chance to listen to this in my car, like my face just almost melted off. This beat is just so mean, and it's just a whole track. I love kind of like the horror theme on this track, because Subbenstein kind of and the hook is like my sub came alive. It's such a banger. Like, it is such a banger of a track. And then the best thing about this song, and it might be one of my favorites on the entire project, the beat switch up in the middle of this song, man. It is so smooth, and the track just rides out in this really nice way, and you get Krit singing this little melody. It is perfect, man. And Manny killed it on the beat. Manny even killed it on the oh no, I don't think he did like an intro to the track, but it's at the end of Big Bank, and then the end of Big Bank leads into Subbenstein. But man, such a banger. Like, that track is so mean. The next song on here, and this is the only track I honestly didn't really like that I don't go back to, is 1999 featuring Lloyd. And this is kind of like I guess you could say like a Cash Money tribute. But I don't know, like, this was the only song where I was just kind of like, yeah, I don't know about this one, man. Like, I don't know, I could probably see this on the radio. I think people might enjoy it, but I don't know. Yeah. This one didn't do it for me. This was the only song where, like, because the album starts off so good, and then it got to 1999, and I was like, ooh, I don't know, Krit. I don't know, man. You kind of losing me. But right after 1999, then we go into Ride With Me. And it's songs like this that, like, and I've heard this in many other reviews, and it's definitely true, man. Krit like is the South. Like, he lives and breathes Southern hip hop culture. And this track features UGK, so you get a Bun B verse and a Pimp C hook. Rest in peace, Pimp C. I don't know if that's like a old hook or just a hook maybe they had stashed around somewhere that hadn't been used, but it's that southern boom, man. It's just that southern that southern rap, or as Pimp C called it, man, country rap tunes. Like it's just the embodiment of that. That track was mean. Get Up to Come Down with CeeLo and Sleepy Brown. So another thing about this album that I enjoyed that Krit did, and another thing I like about Krit, he's like I said, he's a very versatile MC, a versatile just artist in general. But I love some of the different flows like he had on this album. You get stuff that's like kind of slow, almost to where it almost just seems like he's talking to you. You get that aggressive like bounce flow. Then you go to Get Up to Come Down, and the moment, and this I believe was a track that was produced by Organized Noise, and you can feel it. The second I put this track on, it took me back to Southern Playalistic from Outkast, and even Big Krit's flow. Like he has like this big boy kind of like Southern Playalistic flow, and it's so dope. And I was like I said, man, this dude breathes the South, man. And that song just felt so refreshing to hear. And then CeeLo comes in on his verse, and he's doing like this real old school flow also that I felt like just adds to the track, man. And that's another one. Like that track was just, I feel like him just paying homage to his influences, which if you watch any Big Krit interviews or anything like that, he makes it a point to give credit to the people that came before him and everybody that he grew up listening to. And it tells in tracks like this where, like I said, man, that track just you get transported back in time to Southern Playalistic Cadillac music as soon as you cut that track on, man. It's so mean man. And then it goes from Get Up to Come Down to Layup, and Layup is my jam on this album, man. And this is the first track I would say, because a lot of on the first disc of this album, a lot of it is like it's real trunk heavy, it's real upbeat, the beats knock really loud. Layup is like the first track where things kind of take it takes a real slow, real chill turn, and Layup gave me this real like Bone Thugs and Harmony vibe, especially the way Krit is singing on the hook, and even the way he's flowing and the way he's harmonizing it made me think of like Crazy Bone. And that track is so just chill. That's the track you listen to, you in the car. I mean, it's cold now, so don't put your windows down, but that's the track, man. If it's the summertime, man, you put your windows down, you let that blare through your speakers, and you just cruising. Like that's another favorite, like probably top 3 favorite songs on both discs. Like if you put them all together, this will still be in my top 3, man. I love that track. He also had a pretty good use of skits on here. There's an interlude called Classic where these two guys are arguing back and forth about the album being classic. He has another skit on the second half of the disc. If I remember, I'll get to that. But I like the skits that he did using here. Ox Chord is another dope track where literally it's him just paying homage to the people he grew up listening to. And on that track, he mentions a lot of like old soul singers and stuff like that. Because like I said, if you ever listen to a Krit interview, like he's not afraid to mention his influences. So the Ox Chord track is basically a concept of passing the aux chord and him putting people on to everything that he grew up listening to, from jazz musicians, blues musicians, soul singers, everything like that. So that track is dope. That beat is really dope too. That was like almost the whole first disc, and then it closes out with Get Away, which is another dope track. So like I said, man, this first disc, a lot of just southern boom, but it's elevated. The production, I can't stress it enough. The use of like a lot of live instrumentation on the production on a lot of these tracks really elevates these beats, and it makes everything sound more grand. It sounds more lush. It sounds more polished. And I guess I'll get to it in the second half of the album. But Krit, I watched an interview where Krit had mentioned that, like, one of the, I think it was Keep the Devil Off, which I'll get to in a little bit, but he said he took like 2 years to make that track because he wanted to get organs and he wanted to get choirs, and like he had a vision for what he wanted that track to sound like, and he really took the time to do it. And, you know, since he's not on a label, he's not like on a deadline or anything, so he could really take the time to craft the songs and get them to sound how, you know, he wanted them to sound. And you can definitely just feel that throughout the first, really the whole project, is he really took his time and got these songs to sound the way they needed to, so that he's not putting out a half product. Everything sounds full, everything sounds complete. So first disc, man, the first disc is just bangers. So if you're in the mood to just hear your trunk knock, that first disc, that's where it's at. Then you get to the second disc, and Krit just has a way of just making intros that are just so mean. But the second disc is mean, but in a different way, because it's a completely different vibe. And when I finished listening to the second disc, I was trying to think. I was like, man, maybe he should have just taken a few songs from the second and put it on the first and just made it one album. And then I sat and thought about it, and after a few more listens, I was like, I don't think he could have, because the second disc almost feels like a completely different like project. Like you can't throw songs from the first disc on the second, or throw songs from the second on the first and make one album. Like, it almost felt like these two discs had their own purposes. With the first disc, he just wanted to give you that southern boom, and then the second disc is where we get that side of Krit with songs like songs more in the vein of like The Vent, Yesterday, Meditate, where we get this real introspective, really honest, really soulful Krit. And right off the back, man, first track and the second disc, like I said earlier, this is the Justin Scott side, and the title track or opening track is called Justin Scott, and the whole track is just this beautiful beautiful musical piece that opens up the project, man. And it's mostly just an instrumental, and then you get some vocals towards like the latter half of the track, and it's just the intro, and it's not even really a lot of words, but it's the instrumentation, and that first and that opening is so powerful, and it really does set the tone for the second disc. And the second disc, like I said, is a lot more personal, and you start to get, you know, like concepts and things on the second disc and different topics that he highlights. And I'll get to songs in specific, but just to name a few examples, like in Mixed Messages, that track, he literally is talking about mixed messages, and where like he doesn't always know what direction he needs to go into with his music. And actually, to tie it into the first track, I believe the end of the Justin Scott track, it ends with like all these people are just telling him like, yo, you need to do this, make this song, rap about this, rap about that. And he just has all these like conflicting voices in his head, which I think is just a really good lead up to Mixed Messages. And then you get him talking about, you know, he's not sure what kind of music he should make, where his career should go. Is he a hypocrite for making this kind of music, but he doesn't really live that way, so on and so forth. Like that's just a really dope track, a really good personal track where he's really looking and examining himself. Another dope track, or before I get into individual tracks, just other topics, you also get some real like emotional and like raw tracks on here, man. He goes into mentions of like regrets about his life, his fears, depression, the industry, of course, he always got to get his Mississippi Ode track, which I'll get to in a little bit, because that track is man. You know what? I probably should just go down the line, man. Like it's too much, man. This album is just so. After Mixed Messages, we go to Keep the Devil Off, and this track, man, is just like a Southern Baptist church hip hop track, all wrapped in one, and it is pulled off flawlessly. Like it has this real like just gospel bounce to it, man. And like I said, live instrumentation. And this is the track I mentioned earlier that it took him a few years to make, because he wanted to get like organs and, you know, choirs, and you hear all of that in this track, and it's just it's done so well. And then I like that this track is like 5 minutes, because if you've been to like a Southern church, you know how it get with the choirs. Like it might run a bit long, but they just jam out. And like the song is basically over by like the 3-minute and 30-second mark. The last like 2 minutes of the songs is just a rehash of them just jamming out. But it just, the feel and the bounce to it, man. The musicality of that track, everything about that song is put together so well. And that joint is just infectious. Like if you hear that song, you don't even gotta be religious, man. If you hear that song and your shoulders don't bounce a little bit, or like you gotta feel something when you hear that song, it's banger. Miss Georgia Fornia featuring Joy. Don't know who Joy is, but she was bodying this hook. Like she put every ounce of her soul and being in this track, man. And I love the concept of the song where he's kind of talking about the song is really just looking at the perspective of his home state of Mississippi, kind of like calling out to him, like, listen, man, you left to go to Georgia to further your music career. Now you out in California. Like, did you forget about us? It's a really dope song, just examining that, about how he started in one place, but he had to move on to kind of further, his career. But he's, still reminding Mississippi that, of course I still ride for y'all. I'm still down with y'all, even though I'm not always there. I'm out traveling, handling business. But, but that's another song, man. Really well produced. And like I said, Joy was killing that hook. Joy was bodying that hook. Then you get two good like relationship theme kind of tracks with Everlasting and Higher Calling with Jill Scott. She had a really good feature on here. Then you get another use of an interlude track called The Weekend. That's a pretty clever, pretty funny skit. But these last like 3 to 4 tracks, man, he closes the second half of this album out so good. Price of Fame is just literally just a track about that, like how he's losing, or things he's losing to chase fame, and how relationships become strained, and suddenly now if he says no, then like family don't rock with him no more. And it's this really brings out, like, especially the latter half of the disc, brings out that real introspective Krit that I know and love, like I said, for tracks like The Vent, for tracks like Meditate, where he's really just getting his feelings off of his chest. Drinking Sessions. Whew. I saw somebody else say this, I think, on a comment. Drinking Sessions is like The Vent 2.0. This track is one of the most raw, emotional tracks I think I've ever heard from Krit. And literally there's a point probably about towards the middle of the song where he's literally like almost in tears, and he just has this really big vent just about like the troubles in his career, how his life is going. And then like he gets to this part where he starts talking about this dream that he had about his grandmother, even though she's passed away. But how, like he said, like his mind's playing tricks on him with the dream, but he needed that dream because it was like reassurance that he was doing okay. And he has this the one line where he's talking about he calls his dad before every flight because he thinks about death a lot. And like that was the part where like he's literally like almost in tears as he's rapping the verse. And like that song is just, that joint will hit you. Like that song it'll hit you right in the chest, man. It's just a really just honest and just raw track. Just a really vulnerable track by Krit. Like I said, it really is like the Vent 2.0, man. It's a really sombering but just real honest track, and a real eye opener, like a real, it's you just feel it, man. Like, and that's another thing about this album, like another thing about Krit in general, like you feel the music, man. Like he's not in here rapping just for the sake of rapping or making a song just for the sake of making a song. Like you feel it, man. You can feel like the passion and the anger, whatever he's trying to convey. He does good at getting that emotion across. So yeah, man. Drinking Sessions, awesome track. The light, man. Robert Glasper and Bilal. I love Big Krit working with Robert Glasper. Glasper, man, brought some really just this really good like soulful jazz vibe to the track. Bilal, you know, if Bilal is on your song, you're doing something right. Bilal was really good on the hook. I just love the instrumentation in this track, and I love really like the topic too. Krit kind of goes in a lot about trying to just get through like racism in America and like the current climate, and how, you know, he through everything he's still trying to see the, you know, the light, metaphorically speaking, that, you know, he still thinks he can make it through. But I love the instrumentation on that track. Robert Glasper did his thing on that track, and so did Bilal, and that track came together really well. This whole album, man, and I'm not even gonna go into. I think there was one more track I didn't mention, but I could go on and on about this album, man. But it's so good. Like this is the project. If you're a Krit fan, that like this is what we've been waiting for. Kind of like the Rhapsody album, where I've been a fan of Rhapsody for a while, and while all her projects were solid, we were just waiting for that one that like would push her over the top, and she did that with Layla's Wisdom, and Big Krit did that with this album, Forever Is a Mighty Long Time. Like I said, a lot of his old mixtapes, they're really good. You know, albums have been hit or miss to solid, but this joint right here, this is the one. Like this is the one, man. Like this is this is his magnum opus. Like this is the project in his discography that I think really pushed him over the edge. Like, and it's not often people do double disc albums and they turn out great. Like both of these discs are good pretty much all the way through. Like I said, throughout this entire project, including like both discs, like all 20 plus songs, the only track that I honestly didn't really like all that much was 1999. So what? That's one out of like 23 tracks. Like this album was just, it was so on point. Like everything just came together well. Musically everything came together. Concepts came together. Krit's flow, and it's everything just worked perfect. Like all the stars aligned, and everything just worked out. But this yeah, man, this album is just brilliant. Like the Joey Badass album for me has held the #1 spot for a long time. That spot got kind of threatened with Daniel Caesar's Freudian, but I think Big Krit might have came in, man. He might have stole that spot. Like, the reason I haven't been able to listen to other albums is because I keep coming back to this one, and it's like every time I listen to it, I find a new favorite song. And I would recommend just standouts, but really, like, I can't just give you like this whole everything's a standout. Like, you get everything, man. Like I said, if you want to hear just good Southern boom, you got that on the first disc. If you're in the mood to kind of relax, you want something a little more introspective, you get the second disc. This album fits every mood and like anything you could possibly want from an artist, like you got on this album. Like, I don't really know how else to say it. This project was just so well crafted, and yeah, man, Big Krit came through in a major way. And a slight segue. This was I don't want to feel like I'm taking shots, but kind of like with Logic. Like, this is what I want from a Logic album, and I thought I was gonna get that with Everybody, but that one, unfortunately for me, kind of fell short. But like, I feel like Logic to me also has one of these in him, just a really, really great project that'll push him over. And I don't know, after I listened to this album, Logic was the first person I thought of. Like, come on, bro, now I'm waiting for you. Like, I know you got one of these in you just got to sit down and craft it like Krit did. But Krit bodied this album, man. This joint slaps. It's soulful. It knocks, but it's soulful. It's beautiful. Everything's put together well. Every feature brings it. I don't know what else to say. Big Krit, forever is a mighty long time. Easily, I would say personally, his best project that I've heard from him, albums and mixtapes included. Probably one of the best albums this year. This is definitely going to be in my top 20. This is going to be probably like my top 2. this joint, as of right now, this probably is number 1 for me. Like, this I love that Joy album. I love Joey Badass's album, but this joint right here, bro. But yeah, man, that's support the music. Buy the album, iTunes. I think he's still selling physical copies. I got mine off Amazon, and I jam this bad boy all the time. Support good music, man. He's an indie artist who definitely deserves some support. Def Jam. Well, I know if somebody from Def Jam heard this album, you got to be kicking yourself in the throat. like you guys let this walk out of your building. Nobody stopped to be like, hey, maybe we can work this out. Like, what were y'all doing? Like, I don't know. But Big Krit, forever is a mighty long time. Great music. Great mix of just Southern boom, Southern soul, gospel influence, everything, man. Shout outs to all the producers who contributed, who I think really helped do a good job with giving Krit an elevated sound. Shout outs to everybody who helped with live instrumentation. You know, had people on keys, bass, guitar, all that good stuff. Everybody who contributed to this album musically just helped everything come together so well. And this is what an album sounds like when you live up to your full potential, and you also really take your time to craft something without, rushing or trying to put out a project just for the sake of putting out a project. So this joint is flames. That's all I got. I keep going on. Give this joint a listen. Give this album a listen. Both discs is all fire. You can't go wrong. You really can't go wrong. But yeah, man. Shout out to Big Krit, man. Keep going in this direction, because you can definitely go nowhere but up. I don't know how you top this, but I'm interested to see how. and I'm waiting for that next project whenever it may be. So yeah, man. that's all I'm gonna say on that. Next album, last album I'll be talking about, man. Wu Tang Clan, Saga Continues. I'm not gonna go to a whole history of Wu Tang. If you don't know who Wu Tang Clan is, I don't really know what to tell you. This probably ain't the podcast for you. So I'm gonna just jump straight into this album. I was a little conflicted on this album because on one hand, it is a good album, and no matter how much I critique it or, you know, maybe mention a negative, I don't want that to get lost in the review. Like, I think this is a good album. It's a solid album, but at the same token, like, it doesn't feel like a Wu-Tang album. It almost feels like a compilation that just so happens to have Wu-Tang members on it and other people that happen to fit the Wu-Tang sound. And speaking of the sound, I guess I'll just go into that. This is not produced by RZA. Excuse me. This is produced, the entire album, I believe, is produced by DJ Mathematics. And I want to give him credit, though, because while it may not be like that RZA sound that, you know, I'm pretty sure a lot of fans were hoping for, I still think he did a solid job on the production. There were definitely some head nodders. He definitely had good use of samples. Like, it was good production. It wasn't like the vintage Wu sound that I think a lot of people hoped for, but it wasn't bad production either. Like, these were really solid beats. Like I said, he gave them a few different looks. Few of these tracks I think were a bit out of the box or a bit different than normal what I would hear from a Wu-Tang project. So I think he deserved to be commended for carrying the production in. And like I said, he did a solid job. There weren't any terrible beats or any beats where I was like, yeah, that don't sound right. You know, like he definitely did a good job on the production. So shout outs to Mathematics. I thought he did a pretty solid job on production. And I also liked how, you know, it doesn't have the Wu sound, but he still kept some Wu elements. Like I said, a lot of the tracks are still like those head nodding joints where a dude can just get on the beat and just kind of ride. He still does like the classic use of, you know, throwing in little kung fu movie interludes throughout the track. So it still has somewhat of a Wu feel, but with just mathematic beats. So, but on that end, I thought it was pretty solid. The rest of the album, in terms of appearances and guest features and the actual rapping, I mean, overall, you kind of know what you're gonna get with a Wu album. Dudes come in, they get over these beats, they just do their thing. They just, you know what you're getting with a Wu project. But this just, it felt kind of different. It felt kind of, like I said, it was a little bit like disjointed. Like, some people were spazzing, some people weren't so much. And then the other thing about this album is, like, not every Wu-Tang member appears, and then some of the core group members aren't. They're very they appear sparingly on the album, I guess you could say. U-God, I believe, he's not on this album at all. GZA has like one verse. We get one mini ODB soundbite at the end of a track. RZA is on a lot of the he's on like the intro, the outro, and interlude. He might be on like 2 other tracks, so even he's kind of not really on here that much. Capadonna's on here. You get Raekwon, I was about to say Gooseface. Ghostface, Master Killer, of course, Inspector Deck. I don't know, it didn't feel like a complete group effort. At least not every song. There were some songs that kind of had that feel, but then a lot of it just kind of sound like, here, I'll send in my verse, put in the song. Like, it just didn't sound like a complete group effort. So, like, in that way, I thought it was a negative. That, to me, like I said, it didn't sound like a Wu-Tang album. It just, more so to me, just sounded like a kind of like just like a compilation almost with just Wu Tang members. But on the same token, like I said, it sounds like a compilation, but I do like a lot of the features, which is why I was conflicted. One feature, of course, in particular, I love Redman, so anytime I hear Redman verse, I'm happy. And Redman was definitely a highlight on this album. Like pretty much every song he was on, he was killing it. So Redman brought a lot of hype, a lot of energy to the album. He had a lot of the best verses. But the shining star of the album, by far, is Method Man. Like, Meth was the only dude on this album, at least in terms of the Wu Tang members, who, when I heard his verses, I was like, yo, he was out to prove a point. Like, he sounded hungry, he sounded aggressive, he was flowing really well over the beats. Like, he sounded like his pen game, he was in the dojo. Like, he was sharper than the pen man. And it really showed on these tracks. Like, pretty much any track that Method Man is on this album is a track that I dig. Like, because Method Man just, he did his thing pretty much on every song he was on. And I don't think it's a stretch to say he probably outshined, at least if you speaking of the Wu-Tang members, he probably outshined everybody. So big ups to Method Man, man. Like, he to me was the glue for this album. He held everything together. In terms of other features, like I said, Redman's on here. You get a guest verse from Sean Price, rest in peace. Chris Rivers is on here. Street Life is on here. Hugh Hef, Killer Priest. So you get people who definitely, like, I feel like can fit like that Wu-Tang mode. So I think they do contribute well to the project. So in that respect, the features were good in that way, and that, like I said, they fit good with the project, and I think what it was trying to accomplish. This album to me is just solid. Like, it's not great, it's not terrible, it's solid. It has good highlights. Like I said, Method Man was definitely a shining point. Redman was a shining point. Inspector Deck has some dope lines and verses. But like I said, a lot of the core members of the group, like, they're few far in between. And then, I hate to say it, but like Ghostface and Raekwon, man, like, this album needed a lot more of them. But even in the moments where they were there, just like I said, it didn't sound like complete. I don't know. It just didn't all come together the way I think it could have. But with that being said, still joints on here worth checking out. Like I said, it's still a solid album with, solid verses. If you want just beats and rhymes, like I said, in that respect, it's still a dope album. And just some favorite tracks I'll go through real quick. Lesson Learned, which I think is one of like the opening tracks. I love how Disinspected Deck kicked it off. That 1, 2, 3 into the 4. I glide like this, simply no traction on the flow. Like, that joint he kicked it off real well. Redman killed it when he had the line about when I drop it's like Martin, all ears, or something like that. So that track is dope. I like Fast and Furious with Hugh Hef and Raekwon. Really nice. I like a mafioso kind of track of drug tales and Raekwon getting robbed by the feds because they want to know who his connect is, stuff like that. So that track is dope. I really like the first half of this album to me. I think it's a bit better than the second half. But If Time Is Money with Method Man is dope. I like the line, when it comes to John Doe, I'm a slaughter a John Doe, drag him through the drive-through like he ordered the combo. And I think Meth was on his own on that track. I don't think there was another feature. So like I said, man, Meth held the bulk of this album down. So If Time Is Money is a good track. Frozen with Method Man, Killer Priest, and Chris Rivers. Chris Rivers came through at the end, and he gave his little he gave his little lyrical miracle verse, but he was bodying it. So shout outs to Chris Rivers, shout outs to Method Man and Killer Priest. Like, that was a really dope track. People Say, which was the lead singer, this joint is fire to me. I love the Mathematics killed this beat. I love that vocal sample they used on the hook. Everybody I thought was on their A game on this track. Like that was one of the few tracks where it really felt like everybody came together and everybody brought like their full effort. So that was a favorite. If What You Say Is True is another good one. I think this is the one and only track where you get to hear Jizza. This one also has Capadonna, Master Killer, and Street Life. So that joint is pretty nice. All of them have pretty dope verses. That's one of the few, like I said, another one of the few tracks that does sound like kind of cohesive, so I appreciated that track. Hood Go Bang with Method Man and Redman. Why is this track so short? Like this track is like a minute, I don't know, maybe a minute or two long, but like Redman, it's a simple hook, but it's such a catchy hook. Method Man comes through, like I said, man, the way he's just flowing and rapping, like he sounds hungry. Like I loved that track, but once you really get into it, it's over. Like the track just ends and you're just like, come on, man, y'all could have gave me another verse. Redman didn't get a verse, he just had a hook. Like, could have gave me a little more, but it is what it is. But that joint is nasty. Towards the back half of the album, I feel like you get some different looks. My Only One track, kind of I guess you would say like your relationship track on here, which I thought was a bit of a, had a different vibe to it, I think, compared to the rest of the album, which credit to Mathematics, he threw him a curveball, gave him something different to switch it up a little bit. What was the other one on here? Well, I guess to mention RZA also, he's on the track Why. One of the few tracks on here that also I feel like sticks to kind of like a concept where RZA's kind of going through themes of, racism, police brutality, being black in America, and things like that. Was it G'd Up? I think it's G'd Up, which has Method Man on here, where like at one point they got like some little auto-tune crooning on the hook or doing some of the singing, but I liked it. Like it, not a great track, a little bit of a different look, different sound from Wu, keep things different, but I enjoyed that one. The Pearl Harbor track, I'm conflicted on this one because I did not like the hook. Did not like the hook. Ghostface, Method Man, RZA, and rest in peace Sean Price. And like I listened to this track because I like, I just love Sean P verses. Sean P kicked that joint off really good, but like it's something about the hook of that song just like, I don't know. The verses were good, the verses were solid, but that hook, it just kind of like, I don't know. Hook was a hit or miss. But yeah, like I don't really have a ton to say about this album. Like it's just a solid project, and that's kind of all I can really say. And I'm not sure if it's a good or a bad thing. It just kind of is what it is. Like it's just a solid listen. If you want dope beats and dope rhymes, it's the project for you. Like, but like if you're a really hardcore Wu fan, I would just say you got to go into this album, unfortunately, not expecting. This is not Into the 36 Chambers. Like it doesn't have that kind of feel to it. It's something different. It's a solid project, like I said, but it's not the whole Wu sound, if that makes sense. And when you listen to it, if you haven't heard it, if you listen to it, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But I've done this review kind of late, so I'm pretty sure by the time you guys listen to this, you probably heard the album already. But it's just a solid project. It just doesn't all come together. But like I said, even with that said, there are shining spots. Like I said, Method Man definitely brought it on this album. Redman was dope on his features. A few times you get Inspector Deck, he's dope on here. And I thought Mathematics did a solid job on production. So I mean, it's definitely worth a listen. It's a solid album. It's just not, I guess it's not what you kind of hope for. Like, but it's just a solid listen. It's kind of all I can say. But I enjoy it though. There are still tracks I go back and listen to. I just put it on knowing that, you know what, it's a Wu Tang album, but it's not a Wu Tang album. I don't know. But like I said, man, Saga Continues. It's a solid album. So if you're a Wu fan, I still think it's definitely worth a listen. You just, your mind won't be blown away, but you'll get some solid verses, and you'll get a small bit of that taste of Wu, but it ain't the full serving, unfortunately. But it's a good listen, and if you like that kind of hip hop, I think it's definitely something worth checking out. But I don't really have much else to say on that project. It's just solid. That's pretty much it. So yeah, man, just quick recap. Thor Ragnarok, dope project. Dope movie. Solid addition to Marvel's cinematic universe. Easily the best Thor movie. Make sure you stay after the credits for the 2 scenes afterwards. Big Krit, forever is a mighty long time. Fire project. Like, bruh, just straight fire project, man. Both discs, just let me not. I go back on and on about that album. Wu Tang Clan, Saga Continues, just solid album, man. Solid Wu album. Just not really, like I said, it sounds more of a compilation than like a focused Wu album, but it's still a solid project that's worth listening to. So yeah, man, that's all I got for today. Like I said, upcoming albums I'll probably be reviewing. I've been giving Open Mic Eagles album some listens, so that review will probably be coming soon. Got a few other projects I've been checking out, so music content coming soon. MMA fights, of course. If you listen to our fight podcast with me and the Anti-Cool, it literally fights every weekend, pretty much all the way up until 2018. So there won't be a lack of fights to talk about, and MMA never sleeps. A whole bunch of drama, which we covered in the podcast. So if you're an MMA fan, give that a listen. But like, share, subscribe. If you know somebody who likes MMA, also likes hip hop, tell them give us a listen. And like I said, man, you can listen to the podcast on SoundCloud, on YouTube, Google Play. We up on iTunes. If you're on iTunes, please subscribe and rate. I would definitely appreciate it. If you want to send in emails, dojotalkpodcast@yahoo.com. Send in some questions. We'll read them on the show. Try to get some interaction going. If you want to holler at me, I'm on Twitter @SerialSensei. And we also got the Dojo Talk Podcast Facebook page. So we out here. Appreciate all the listeners, anybody who shared and liked. I feel like the numbers from what I've been seeing, they've been kind of going up. They've been creeping up a little bit. So we might be gaining some steam. So appreciate the new listeners, for checking us out. And everybody else, from day one, from listening from episode 1 up to now. And 57 episodes going strong. First, my goal was just to hit 20, so we've doubled that, and no plans of slowing down. Too much to talk about. I really enjoy doing this. Still trying to grow the fan base, all that good stuff. But yeah, man, we out here. I'm out here killing these podcast streets. But appreciate you guys for listening, man. It's been another episode of the Dojo Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Serial Sensei. Until next time, catch you guys later. Peace.